All right. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen, and big dogs, of course? How is it going? I am no one, and happy Monday, and happy week of Thanksgiving, where there's a lot that we can be thankful about. Today's video, we are going to be doing a deep dive into a discussion I have been hearing quite a bit ever since Ashes of Creation announced their December 11th early access to Steam. Now, as you guys know, I did 3 videos last week kind of talking about the polar extremes, the hyper positive sentiment of what could happen for early access, the negative one about what could happen, and overall, like, I'm kind of in the middle just because I lack a lot of information. Like, I'm not a developer, I'm just a guy following a project, and because of that, there's just a lot of things I don't know, and I have to explain that there's a lot of things that I just do not know, of course. One of the arguments that I've been seeing brought up quite a bit that I vehemently and strongly disagree with is, it's not that serious. It's the argument that early access could get review bombed so badly that basically it's going to ruin the project Ashes of Creation, which I already did a video kind of like this talking about this last year. And I even said in last year's video that this is going to happen again at the next big milestone. It's going to happen at the end of Alpha 2. It's going to start at the beginning of Beta 1. It's going to start in Beta 2, and it's going to happen again during the live release. Everybody loves to react to whatever is happening in the now. Whatever is happening in the now is the most important thing that's happening. And so if I were to tell you a year ago at this time that a lot of people were very, very concerned about the release of Ashes of Creation going in Alpha 2, so much so to a point that they were worried about NDA being released and that they wanted the game to remain under NDA because they didn't feel like it was polished enough of a product for people to see because they were worried that it was going to ruin the project then. A lot of you right now would be like, no, there's no way that that was a thing. There's no way that that was happening. That was over a year ago. Obviously, nothing's happened. Well, yeah, but at the time, recency bias took over and everybody thought that that was going to happen. And now a lot of people are very, very sure that with the early access announcement, that the exact same thing's going to happen, that it's going to completely ruin the project. And the same thing, like I said, is going to happen for all the next major announcements. And so much like what I hope the development team does, since I kind of made this video, a video like this last year, I already know what people are going to rebuke me with. I already know what they're going to come up with, and I'm going to improve and iterate on this video compared to my video last year. You see, last year I brought up a couple of games, and what people decided to do is they decided to say, well, yeah, this game that you brought up isn't like Ashes of Creation because of this reason. This game isn't like Ashes of Creation because of this reason. Ashes of Creation succeeding or failing will be on its own merits because it's its own game. Of course, which is 100% true. There's nothing wrong with that thought process. But just like history, where history doesn't often repeat, but it rhymes, gaming content often rhymes. And so what we can do is we can go back and we can look in the past at other games that have gone through similar issues. They could be in different genres or whatever, and we could identify specifically what went bad for that game and then what happened later on. And with this video, I'm going to bring in a lot more games to talk about, and I want to paint the bigger picture so that you guys can see what I've been seeing, and maybe you guys can jump to the same conclusion that I've jumped to, where it doesn't matter about the reviews. The initial reviews are going to be the initial reviews. Initial reviews have been good or bad throughout the history of gaming content. All that matters is if the development team improves and iterates on their product and makes it better. Nobody plays a game because of the reviews. They play a game if it's good or if they think it's going to be good. So that's going to be the contention of this video. Let's just dive into the games. Now, first things first, we're going to talk about the game I probably talk about more than just about any other game on this channel, which is Baldur's Gate 3. And the reason I bring up Baldur's Gate 3 is not that it is combat-wise similar to Ashes of Creation or that it is even in the same genre or anything like that. It's that they had 3 years of early access and 3 years of early access development to go over, to have players come in and go through their content like a fine-tooth comb. You see, Larian Studios is fantastic. I think everybody agrees that Baldur's Gate 3 universally is regarded as one of the greatest games of all time already, due to its storyline, due to its plot, due to the voice acting, all of that. But something that cannot be oversold as well is how polished the game was when it first came out. When it came out, it just ran so smoothly. How many times have you guys picked up a game where it was just laggy for the first couple of weeks or months or whatever, and it just kind of ruined the feeling of the game? That's not how Baldur's Gate 3 released. Sure, it had a couple minor issues, but it was just so smooth. And what I would contend is their 3 years of early access open development where they got players to come through and play through their first act and comb through it like a fine-tooth comb really led through players enjoying that new player experience, because everything just functioned well and they got to be able to be more immersed in the story and the storyline early on, because obviously the first impressions matter. Now, do I think Ashes of Creation will be the greatest game of all time or anything like that? No, of course. I mean, it would be lofty expectations to say that a Kickstarter game in an MMORPG genre that has been in decline for the last 2 decades will all of a sudden see a game of the year. But I will contend that the idea of having early access or an alpha development stage where you're listening to and iterating feedback can be a great game, and it can develop into a great game, because we've already seen one of the greatest games of all time go through this process, and because of that process, the product came out better for it, in my opinion. And so that's why I always compare the two, because their early access development, if you go back and you look at their Steam database reviews, yes, their database if you go on Steam database and you look at Baldur's Gate 3, their initial reviews were still mostly positive. I'm not saying anything about it, but if you compare their ratio, they've gotten better over time. If you look at the reviews now compared to their reviews 3 years ago, obviously there was a lot more complaints, 3 years before the game came out, that there was performance issues and stuff like that. But through iteration and development, there's so much less of that, and there's just way more positive reviews to where now it's where it's at. And so that's why I bring up Baldur's Gate, because yes, it started off in a better spot. Yes, it started off more polished, but it also got better over the 3 years of development. And there's no denying that. Now, on to some other games. Let's talk about, before we dive into these games, I want to start with this preface. If you believe that an alpha state can ruin a game to a point to where people will not play it because of how bad the reviews are, I think we can all agree that a live game reveal is actually worse, right? Like if a game reveals terribly, that's more of a death sentence than an alpha being bad or a beta being bad, because it's your actual game launch, right? I think we can universally agree, like, hey, getting your finger chopped off, that's unfortunate, but it's not as bad as chopping off your entire arm, or maybe from the torso down, or an entire leg. Like there's severity to this, and a live release going horribly is way worse. And so I wanted to bring up some games that had comeback stories after a terrible live release and show what they did and what happened. And the first one we're going to talk about is No Man's Sky. I'm sure a lot of you guys know about it now. It's a couple of years ago, it started getting a lot more hype because it got a lot better. It opened in 2016, and a lot of people were very, very excited about 2016 No Man's Sky. But the issue was, it didn't reveal what the content that it was supposed to. It was supposed to have a multiplayer feature. It didn't come out with multiplayer. Their content was repetitive and boring, and there was a lot of technical issues within the game. And so how many times have you been hyped about a game, and then all of a sudden, the first reveal is just, the developers looked at this and they decided that they could do one of two things, right? They could basically tuck tail and run, and they could be another game that was much anticipated and often hyped, and basically sell a shitty product and take whatever money they can and go off with it. Or they could work on their product, and that's what they did. They had 7 years of free updates. They came out with a new DLC. They implemented the features that they said that they were going to. No Man's Sky now has full VR support. They also have multiplayer. They redid their storylines and their quest lines. And now their content is just way deeper and more immersive because they listened to the feedback from the player base. The developers just dug in and they're like, okay, this is what they were complaining about with our game. Like, we didn't fulfill our promises. Let's go through with our promises. And so through 7 more years of these free updates, No Man's Sky went from a very, very terrible release to like one of the best video game comeback stories ever, which is really cool. It is just an awesome story to hear. Another game that started off terribly, Cyberpunk 2077. I remember when this game came out in 2020, a lot of my friends were really excited about it. They were very excited about playing Cyberpunk. The issue is the release went terribly. There was a lot of performance issues. There's a lot of bugs, not performance issues in the bedroom, performance issues in the video game, which is way worse. The performance initially was so bad that the PlayStation Store pulled the game away because that's how bad it was. Imagine the reputational hit that company must have taken, that your game has so many bugs that PlayStation was like, we're not going to sell these copies. Like it's hurting us to sell your shitty game, right? So once again, the developers were met with this product. They're like, hey, your game sucks right now. There are a lot of things going on. It's very unplayable right now. Nobody can really get into the systems because it's so buggy. What are you going to do? Well, they could have done what a lot of other teams do. They could have tucked tail and ran and taken whatever profits they had or whatever losses they had and went on to make another game. Or they could iterate on the systems that they had and continue to listen to the feedback and make the game better. So that's what they decided to do. They continuously patched Cyberpunk over and over and over again to try and fix the performance issues that they had with the game. They had a massive 2.0 update as well, and they overhauled a bunch of gameplay systems to just make the game more playable. And now it's gone from a game with a terrible launch and shitty initial reviews to a very well-reviewed game because of all of the depth and iterations that the development team did despite that. Another example, this one is very real, it hits very close to home, is Battlefield 4. It released in 2013, and the initial launch was buggy. Guys, this game was hot dog water. Like, it was such a piece of shit. I was so excited. This was way back when I really enjoyed playing first-person shooters, but it was so bad that I never picked this game up again. Like I legitimately tried it, and all my friends were excited about Battlefield. I tried it. I didn't like it. I never touched this game again because of how bad the performance was for this game. Now, since then, a lot of things happened. Once again, they could have tucked tail and ran. Another shitty game released. Let's just introduce a new one. Whatever. They could have done that. But what they decided to do, their development team, they decided to patch the game and fix it. And they opened up a community test environment where they had players come in and provide feedback, and they, went through all their systems bugs and issues. They fixed a lot of the core issues that they had, and eventually, this game turned into a really fun game. My brother, who, will rename nameless, of course, he was playing this Battlefield 4, up until the newest Battlefield came out. And my personal, like a lot of first-person shooters come and go throughout time. Only the best ones hold any value over a decade plus of time. And Battlefield, for a lot of people, was one of them. And that's because the development team actually just unfucked a lot of the issues that they had. And so we're starting to see a theme here with all these games. We're seeing a theme where, yes, sure, if stuff is happening in an alpha or beta or a live release, if it goes terribly, yes, that's bad for their initial reviews, it's bad for their initial sales, but it's not the death knell like people think it is. Because as long as the development team listens to feedback from the players and they continue to work on and iterate on these systems, they can make a new game in the future or improve the game to a point that people want to play it. Because people don't care about reviews. That's not what drives people to play games. Is the game fun? And so those were the big ones that I was thinking of, the big ones that I done research on. In the next video, when we do this, when beta 1 comes out, I'll do more videos talking about this. But I do know after all of these, people are going to go, no one, sure, sure, those are all the games, those are great stories and everything, but not a single one of them are MMORPGs, and not every story has a happy ending. And I completely agree with you. I completely agree that you are absolutely right. And so let's talk about some MMORPGs. Let's talk about Final Fantasy XIV, which came out in 2010. And it was so bad, it released so terribly that the development team got together and they were like, hey guys, should we kind of tweak this thing? Should we improve the stuff that everybody's complaining about? Because all we're getting is horrible, terrible reviews. Let's where do we work on first? And the main developer comes in and he's like, well, how about we just scrap the whole thing and start over? Because literally there's no core to this game that anybody likes. There's nothing to hold on to right now. And that's what they did. They released Final Fantasy XIV in 2010, and then they took the game down for a year. And so they had their full live release. It flopped horrifically. And literally the development team just went in and they're like, you know what? We're just going to make a brand new game. We're going to rebuild it from the ground up. We're going to hear what everybody said. And we're going to listen to feedback from the community. And we're going to continue to roll out content that the player base wants. And that's what they did. And for the last 10 plus years, Final Fantasy XIV has been one of the best MMORPGs in the genre. Flopped horribly, horrific reviews, unstable content. The entire thing was completely unusable from a base perspective on release, not in an alpha, on release. And it came back to be one of the better MMOs in the genre because the developer team continued to iterate and improve on their systems. Now, obviously, these are all like the good stories. These are all the great happy endings and everything. Let's talk about some games that did not improve on themselves, improve on questions that happened in the beta, and see what happened with them. Let's talk about Star Wars: The Old Republic. Obviously, Star Wars is going to carry a huge name, right? Like as an example, I don't mind Star Wars. I'm not a huge Star Wars fan, but I love Lord of the Rings. I do. And I played New World. I didn't like how Amazon Gaming Studio handled New World. I think it was one of the most mismanaged MMOs of all time. But because they were working on a Lord of the Rings MMO, I still would have given it a shot. Like heart of hearts, I can say that I wasn't going to, but I know I was going to. That's just how much of a nerd I am for Lord of the Rings. And so a lot of people are that way for Star Wars. And so if they see a Star Wars game, they're going to try it. People tried it during the beta, and they're like, this doesn't really feel like an MMO. It doesn't feel like it's massively multiplayer online. It feels like a lot of the storylines and quests, it's very solo player focused. It's the antithesis of the genre. This was one of the issues that they had in the beta. And when the game did release, it did release to over 1.7 million subscribers. They had a lot of people sign up for the game because of the Star Wars name. But the issues from beta still persisted because the development team didn't focus on what they should have. They didn't focus on making something more immersive. And although there is there's kind of a cult following with Star Wars: The Old Republic, I think a lot of people would agree that some of the stuff that they had was there since the beginning, and the development team never really made anything better. Another example, which is very near and dear to my heart, is The Elder Scrolls Online. The Elder Scrolls Online released way back in 2014, and their issue was performance-based. A lot of issues popped up in their beta. If you go back and you look at 2014 trailers, it was sold as a massively multiplayer online war area where players would be battling in large-scale battles over Cyrodiil. Obviously, it carried a lot of name recognition because it's an Elder Scrolls Online game turned MMO, which is, obviously it's not in the same genre as the other Elder Scrolls games, but a lot of players are going to try it out. It suffered from terrible performance. Horrible performance. And a lot of people brought that up in the beta, hey, you're going to have issues with the game because literally it just doesn't work when you start getting a lot of people in the same area. And we're in 2025. It's 11 years later, and the Elder Scrolls Online still suffers from these issues. They've had performance issues on their game since day one, and it hasn't really gotten better. They've tried to analyze things. It's just their base code never really improved and never really got better. Now, is that the developer's fault? Is it the underlying game's fault? Whatever. I'm not here to tell you who I think did the issue with this was. Regardless, this was an issue that popped up during the beta that was never fixed. And because it was never fixed, it led to lots of issues at launch and lots of issues over the last decade where, although some people like myself really, really enjoyed the game, the performance just pushed a lot of people away. It just didn't work well enough to a point to where it could be good. And this is my current issue with where Ashes of Creation is at, because I do think eventually they're going to get their servers up and running, but I've been so beaten by my last favorite MMO suffering from performance issues that until Ashes has good performance, this is going to stick in the back of my head. Hey, if this doesn't get fixed, I already know what path this is going to go down. I'm not going to jump on this ride again, and so I'm here testing and I'm like, I hope they get this fixed. Like I hope this is something that they get fixed in a decent amount of time, because the idea of large scale PvP battles is fun, but it's not fun if the game doesn't work. And so obviously neither one of these development teams or the games in general were able to fix these core issues long term on what happened with what they had. And so the last one I wanted to bring up was Throne and Liberty, because I've covered this quite a bit. I was watching Throne and Liberty during their beta process, and they went through a lot of issues. I watched some closed beta content illegally. I had a couple friends share with me their screen while they played the closed beta. Participated in the open beta a little bit, watched a lot of content on the open beta. Basically, every big MMORPG YouTuber covered Throne and Liberty because it was a huge release. The game's been cooking at that point for 11, 12 years of development, which is already a no-no, right? Like you'll see people in comment sections saying, you know, if a game takes 10 plus years to develop, I'm not going to play it because it's, you know, it's not good. So I'm not going to touch it for that reason because it took too long. Well, this game was out, you know, at this point in time was in development for 11 or 12 years, and people were checking it out. They're like, okay, well, you know, maybe they've developed something really awesome. And they didn't. Beta got a bunch of negative reviews, like a ton of negative reviews about their AFK XP experience, where you like ran around while AFK. Like, people didn't like that. They don't like the pay to win, of course, because it's a Korean style MMO. They didn't like the grindy aspect to it because, you know, it's a grindy Korean MMO. And then they also didn't like the combat. The combat was a hybrid. You can obviously play tab target, or you can play the action combat, but all of the moves were very ground focused, right? Like when they changed their combat, every single move, like, it didn't feel like it flowed very well. It felt like you were kind of stuck in mud when you're playing, which is a bad feeling for a combat game, right? Like there's nothing wrong with a tab target game as long as the movement feels good, or a hybrid game as long as the movement feels good. And they didn't nail the movement on Throne and Liberty. The quest lines, the storylines, all of it was bad. Like every single review that I heard just absolutely shit on Throne and Liberty during the beta process. And you guys can go back and you guys can look at these videos yourself, but I didn't see a single positive one, and I was looking for it. And then, you know, the CEO came out and was like, hey, you know, we guys hear your guys' feedback. We're going to improve all this, and we're going to release the game live in Korea in 2 months with all these changes in mind, which sounds ridiculous, right? Like, hey, literally everything's wrong with your game. Everything's wrong with your game, and you're going to somehow magically fix it in 2 months? Doubt, right? Doubt. And so it released in Korea. I ended up buying a Korean key. I got a VPN, and I played the Korean version, and you know, I had a little bit of fun with it. It wasn't great, but it wasn't awful. Perfectly mediocre, in my opinion. But it continued to get just negative reviews from different YouTubers. And once again, justifiably so. I didn't play the end game. A lot of the end game critiques were there. And I remember there's a video from Lazy Peon talking about how had an earnings call, and they literally were talking about all their games and talking about their earnings in the first quarter, and they didn't bring up Throne and Liberty. Now imagine you're talking about all your games, and like your new release should be like your biggest sales one, and on the earnings call you don't even bring it up. Like that is a bad sign that things are not going well. And so closed beta didn't go well. The beta didn't go well. The Korean release did not go well. And then, you know, they outsourced to Amazon Gaming Studios, which obviously has a stellar track record of producing nothing but the finest MMO content, you know, like New World, which is recently ended, nothing but the finest. They outsourced their stuff to Amazon Gaming Studio to release to, you know, the West. And so you look at this and you're like, okay, well, we'll see what happens with this game that literally everybody universally hates. Pay to win, whatever. And so when it came live in America, it got all the most negative reviews that I've ever seen. It's a pay-to-win MMORPG. It's a grindy MMORPG. All of the things that you could imagine being stacked in the deck against Throne and Liberty before a live release happened were stacked against them. And still, they had over 300,000 concurrent players on Steam to try out their game. Keep in mind that they also, you know, the game is open to console, and so they probably had more like 400 to 500,000 concurrent players during the live release of Throne and Liberty. Now, did Throne and Liberty succeed? No, they did not, because it wasn't a good game at all. Like it was not a good game. But the game was free. And so a lot of players are like, you know, I see all these bad reviews. I see that A lot of people are shitting on this game, but it's free. I'm going to try it anyways. Maybe I'll like it. Maybe I will like it for free. And when you look at Ashes of Creation, when Ashes of Creation is going to release, no, it's not going to be free, but it's a $15 subscription for 1 month. And so it's not free, but it's not a $50, $60, $70 box cost. It's $15 to try it, which, is the next best step above free. And so Throne and Liberty did not succeed. They still had the same issues that they always had. It was a grindy MMO. The storyline wasn't very good. The combat felt very clunky. They had all the same issues that happened during the beta, still made it to the live, release to America and the rest of the world. But they still had a chance to gain an audience. They still had a chance with fixes, with listening to the player base. They garnered enough players on opening day in those opening couple of weeks that they came out and they tried it anyways. And so when I see all these games, the success stories and the failures that I highlighted, it all comes down to this for me. Like we could cherry pick, different game types and all that. And that's not what I'm trying to do in this video, of course. I narrow it down to, did the developers iterate and improve on the feedback that they received, or did they not? And so if they had net issues and there was performance issues and there was issues with their solo gameplay and whatnot, did they make the game better? Because clearly what we've seen, or what I've tried to show you, is if there's not a death sentence for live release, there's not a death sentence for an alpha or beta 1 or beta 2 release. It's just not going to happen. The only thing that matters is if the development team is listening to the player base and they make something that's fun. Because once again, players do not play games based off of reviews. They play games based whether or not of, am I going to have fun playing this or not? And so Ashes of Creation very well could get review bombed on December 11th. Like, things could go poorly right away. You could have a bunch of haters sign up, wanting to spend $50 to shit on a game. It kind of reminds me of the people that will buy like a jersey to burn it in protest. Like, brother, you already bought the jersey. Like, they don't give a shit. Like, you're putting money in their pockets to complain, but you could have just not put money in their pockets. There will absolutely be people that hate Ashes of Creation that will buy the $50 key just to hate on it. But it's like, you supported the game. Like you supported the game monetarily. If you hate the game, let capitalism work and don't support it monetarily. It just doesn't make, I'm sorry, it just doesn't make any sense. Something I'm going to bring up in a later video. But regardless, it all jumps down to the development team. Do you believe in the development team to make a better game or not? And if you can believe in them, even with bad reviews, the game can get better over time, and it can get improved upon, and it can get iterated upon. If you don't believe that they're going to make changes, if you don't believe that the development team listens to the players and they're going to make a better game, they're probably not. And it's probably just going to suck. You're going to go the way of the Elder Scrolls Online or another game like Throne and Liberty that has failed because, they didn't iterate on the systems that they've had. Now, does this mean that those games are necessarily dead? No. Like I tried to explain in this video, no MMORPG really ever dies. Like if ESO all of a sudden came out with new servers and everything started working perfectly, and they could have these massively multiplayer online battles, and they all of a sudden make PvP better, a lot more players are going to go back and play it because, sure, the game's been bad for the last 5 to 10 years, but it's good now. And I'm playing it now. I'm not playing the game 10 years ago. I'm not playing the game from 10 years ago. I'm playing the game now. And that's how we need to look at these things. And so I hoped I eased some of your guys' concerns. Obviously, there are a lot of concerns around Ashes of Creation. A lot of them are warranted. This one is not, in my opinion. And so I will probably be doing a video like this in a year or in the next year when Beta 1 and Beta 2 announces, and I will have even more video games to talk about then, because just like what I think Ashes of Creation's developers are going to do, I'm going to iterate on this video and I'm going to make it better and better. So I'm going to end this video here. If you guys have any questions or comments, please provide in the comment section below and I will do my best to answer it. As always, guys, thank you for watching. Have a nice day.